Hello and welcome to today's lesson on creating and editing territory structures within Sage CRM. This is part of the security administration training, a new cycle or series of training events that are taking us through the concepts of security administration within Sage CRM. Today's lesson is looking at the idea of creating and editing security structures inside Sage CRM. So this lesson will explain what security territories are and why they matter. We'll look at how territories control data visibility, not user permissions, and then we'll look at the idea of the session walking us through the practical steps involved in creating and maintaining territories. And the examples are going to be based on the standard Sage CRM demo data, matching what you would see within a test environment. This lesson is being recorded like the other lessons within the series of training and will be found up on the Sage Support and Training YouTube channel. And you can see a link to that on the screen now. Our first starting point, though, is really to understand what security territories are. And here we can start to understand that a security territory is a structural container used to control which records a user sees. So every user belongs to exactly one territory, and every record in Sage CRM is associated with a territory. And users can see data in their own territory and any child territories beneath it. And what we're going to see is that territories don't control what actions a user can perform. That is something that we'll see as we discuss security profiles. So we're not going to see that territories allow us to create an opportunity or to insert or edit a case, but rather it is all about visibility of those opportunities and cases dependent on the territory in which both the user and also the data sits. So it is entirely to do with territories controlling what data a user can see. And if we think about security territories inside Sage CRM, we can think of them as a hierarchy. And we start with a top level territory. This is very often called the root territory, although a lot of people will call it the worldwide territory, but there's always a root. And within that, you will have a hierarchy downwards. So you can see here, I've got a hierarchy on the screen, looking at the idea of worldwide, and then underneath that, a Europe territory. At the same level as Europe, we've got US and Canada. And then underneath US and Canada, we've got US West, US East, US Central, and Canada. So somebody who's given rights over a parent territory can see all data in the child territory. So if we think of a user like Susan May, who is a sales manager, who is in the demo data, is assigned to US and Canada, she would be able to see down not only in the US and Canada territory, but she'd also be able to look down into the US West, US East, US Central, and Canada. A child territory, if you're assigned to a child territory, you can only see that child. You can't see data in the parent or sibling territories. And so the idea of the hierarchy allows organizations to model real reporting lines and data ownership, and the structure is enforced automatically by Sage CRM once it's defined. Now, I explained that Susan May because she's in US and Canada can see all of the data labeled as US and Canada, and all of the data labeled as belonging to US West, US East, US Central, and Canada. But if we imagine another user, Brian Little, he's actually placed in the territory US West, and he can only see the data explicitly labeled as US West. He doesn't have rights automatically to be able to look in at what's going on either in US Canada level or into the other siblings at his level within the hierarchy. So he wouldn't be able to see US East, US Central, or Canada in terms of the data there. To understand this in a little bit better, we can start to understand that the hierarchies that are created inside Sage CRM are going to form around different concepts of what a territory is. Probably the easiest to understand is the concept of a geographic territory. The idea that you might have worldwide, underneath worldwide, you might have US and Canada, US East, US West, but they can actually be also functional. So you could have a sales territory, a marketing territory, or a support territory. And what happens is that very often real systems end up using a hybrid model that combines both geography and function. If you think about all the different ways in which you can imagine in which territories are structured, you could have as well the concept of a territory based on industry sectors or verticals. So you might have one territory being the public sector, another territory being perhaps finance, and within the public sector territory you might have sub-territories of education, government, local government, or health. And within the context of finance, you might have insurance, reinsurance, you might have loan management, etc. So you have different concepts of a territory. But in the end, the key principle is that the hierarchy should reflect how data ownership and visibility should work in the customer's business. And you can see on the left-hand side of the diagram here, the actual demo security territory structure inside Sage CRM, and you'll notice that it is actually hybrid in nature. You have the geographical territory of worldwide, and then underneath that US and Canada and Europe, who are at the same level, so they're siblings. And then you have the children underneath US and Canada, US East, US Central, US West and Canada, who are all siblings at the same level. But you also, at the same level of the geographical division, you have a functional division for marketing, and which has itself a hybrid to say marketing Europe and marketing US. So it can be quite interesting in the design of your needs for territorial understanding of data. I can show you this idea of security territory and hierarchy if I log on as two separate users. I've talked about Brian Little and Susan May. So Brian Little is a salesperson assigned to the US West territory. Susan May, on the other hand, is a sales manager and is actually Brian Little's line manager and reporting manager inside Sage CRM. She's the sales manager assigned to the parental territory of US and Canada. So if they both log on, you can see that each user has different opportunities in their pipeline. That's perfectly understandable. They're working with different accounts. But notice that all of Brian's in the left-hand pane are in US West, but that Susan's are in US East and US Central. So she can clearly see data that is not just in her parental territory, her base territory, but all the child territories underneath that. And we can start to see this become even clearer when they start to search for data. You can see that they're both starting to open up the search to be able to look for opportunities. And if they both click search, they both click the find button, you can see that Brian can only see 15 opportunities in the US West territory. So there's no criteria here. He's saying, give me all of the opportunities that I'm allowed to see, and he can only see 15 of them. Whereas Susan can see the 66 opportunities across all of the territories that make up the US and Canada. And that's including US West, US Central, and US East, etc. So a salesperson in US West can only see the records assigned to US West. A salesperson in US East can only see the records assigned to US East. They can't see each other's records, even if they searched for those records by name. But a manager in a higher territory, such as US and Canada, can see both US East and US West data. And this behavior applies consistently across companies, people, leads, opportunities, cases, and custom entities. This makes territories a critical part of data security and governance. So let's see how these territories and the territory hierarchy is created. So I'm going to go into CRM and I'm going to log on as a system administrator. And you have to, you can only maintain security territories if you have been given or delegated system administrator rights. So you have to be a full system administrator or an info manager that has been given certain security rights. And here I'm logging on as the system administrator. I'm going to navigate to my profile and then on to administration, users, and security. So I've come across into the admin screen. Need to go into here into our users, and you'll see that I've got security, and so choose security, and we can start to set up a security territory. Now, changes, anything that I make to territories will affect live data visibility immediately. And so care has to be taken when creating or editing territories, especially in production systems. And so really what you should be doing is you should be planning the hierarchy in advance. You should be modeling what you expect to happen ahead of this. So the administrator should plan the hierarchy before making changes. And territory changes should align with the business structure and reporting needs. Now, I'm going to create a new territory. And to do that, I'm going to use the button that says New Territory to set up the territory and create a territory tree structure. So if I click New Territory, you can see here the existing territories within inside the system. And so I'm going to create a new territory underneath Europe. So if we select the parent territory first, that's going to determine where I'm going to enter the new territory. I want to create a new territory underneath Europe called Benelux. Now, Benelux is a term that refers to the geographic grouping of three neighboring European states, so Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg. It's a convenient term. Very often, salespeople work within those three countries. And so I'm going to here, add Benelux into my screen, and then I can click Save. So click Save, and my screen updates, and you can see here now underneath Europe, the new territory has been added into the hierarchy. Now I had to double check. I was looking at that and making sure that I was in the right place. So on Europe before I entered Benelux, because you need to double check that the territory is created under the correct parent. Now, I can also create, or rather, I can change, I can edit an existing territory. And I'm going to do that now to show you how easy that is. So to do this, I need to just save the change. And I can update an existing territory. I'm coming out and navigating back up to the level of security. And I need to choose Edit Territory. And again, I have to make sure that I select the territory that I'm intending to rename or update. I have to say, I now want to change this. And the territory I'm going to change is Germany. So we see Germany. I've selected Germany. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this because our business, this business in the demo data, isn't just selling into Germany, but rather it's selling into Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, and having the same sales reps covering those three countries. So I've changed this to DACH. So this is a territory not just dealing with Germany. DACH is an acronym that describes Deutschland, Österreich, and or Austria and Switzerland. The Swiss Confederatio Helvetica, I think it is. But the idea is that we are dealing with those three countries together. And that, so once I've made the change to the name, I can choose Save. And now I've saved this. I can see this inside my territory hierarchy, but I've changed the name of a territory, and I need to think about how users will see this and understand this. And you know that Sage CRM is a multilingual system. It supports multiple languages. And so when a territory name is changed, translations may also need to be updated. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just click on the customization button on the left-hand menu, and I can now click on translations. And in here, you can see that I'm searching for DAC in the translations, and we can see that there's only one translation set returned. It's all underneath the caption family territory. And if I click into this, we can see at the moment DACH, because my base language for Sage CRM is the US, is UK English. You can see that that UK translation has been changed to DACH. But I actually want to change all of these. So if I click change, I can now add in and update the translations according to business need. And when I've finished it, I can click save. So what we've looked at just in that last bit is that Sage CRM supports these multiple languages, and when a territory name is changed, translations may also need to be updated. And I did that through administration, customization, translation, and each active language should reflect the updated territory name. And that ensures consistencies for users working in different languages. Now we've come to the end of this training session, and what I'd like you to take away from this is that security territories control the data visibility, not user permission. So we've only looked at where the territories provide you visibility of the data, not whether you can change the data or even insert new data into that entity. The hierarchy of the security territories defines who can see which data. If you're in a parental territory, you can see that territory and all of the data below that hierarchy. So somebody in Europe can see Benelux and DACH. Somebody in US and Canada can see US West and US East. But if they are in US East, they can only see the data at that level. Always plan your territory structure before implementation, and think about the way in which we go ahead and either insert new territories or edit existing territory. So you must be precise about selecting the parental territory or territory that you're carrying out work on. So this brings me to the end now of our presentation for today. So it's a shorter one than yesterday, but we are going to be looking at in the next lesson, we're going to be taking the ideas of what we've seen so far about territory structures and mixing them into the context of a security profile. And that security profile will allow us to define the rights over the different entities. So coupled with the visibility rights that the security territory provides, the security profile will determine what actions we can take on that data. So this is where we are now, and I wonder whether anyone has got any questions. Well, there doesn't seem to be any questions being asked here. So what I'll do is I'll say thank you very much, everyone. And I look forward to seeing you on the next lesson. So thank you again and goodbye.